Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. So let's move on to you, Mike, for the third and final item today. You wrote a piece yesterday that published yesterday on analysis piece on Near Media that was about how Google is creating a bunch of, the sort of fail fast, iterate fast, break things, move fast, all this sort of cliches. They push out a bunch of features, they push out products that are inherently buggy, and then they require, they either don't support them or they're asking volunteers like you in the Google Business Forums to support them and thus externalizing their costs. So tell us about that.
Right. So I'm going to share a screen that sort of reflects my sort of obsessive compulsive behavior. I go into the forums periodically and take a period of time, usually 2 or 3 days, and tabulate regularly the issues that are cropping up in the forum. And what struck me, this is January's issues, and these are issues that have largely remain to a large extent unchanged. The percentages might change from November, but also almost every one of these issues relates to a product either not working as intended or Google not communicating about how the product is supposed to work, thus causing problems which are not dealt with by support and pushed off. And in the case of reviews, as I point out in my article, they're actually disingenuous, where they say we can't recover lost reviews to people who contact support. But if those people happen to find the forum, they find that they can be recovered. And so this is problematic, particularly in the suspension arena. Over the last 6 months, Google suspended thousands and thousands and thousands of businesses, and on their documentation said that if you filed a reinstatement request, you'd hear back from us in 3 days. Well, it was more like 6 weeks to hear back because they had suspended so many. They hadn't built up any mechanism to deal with all the suspensions that they decided they were going to move forward with. And so people were flocking into the forums in fact, initially, product experts were allowed to escalate these if they were older than a couple of weeks, but then they even stopped allowing us to escalate them, and all we could do was tell businesses that Google is taking 6 weeks. Their documentation said 3 days. Now, they finally, last month, updated the documentation to 2 weeks and improved, so suspensions dropped from 20% of the things to 15%. But almost every item on this list is due to some issue with Google design, like, for example, interface problems. This is largely around the new merchant experience, which I know David loves, where people come in and they can't find how to do simple tasks like suggest that an image be removed or listing not showing is a 5%. That's a question where when a business verifies a new listing or a reinstated business gets reinstated, they don't show in the search results for almost 2 weeks. It's sort of a literal sandbox, and Google doesn't tell anybody. So these people think, oh, I just verified, I should be visible to the world. And they're not. So people come into the forum. They don't know what to do. They don't know why it's happening. Same with image upload issues. Your images, if in the first 2 weeks of a verification, your images will be rejected automatically. Google doesn't tell anybody this. It is part of their spam abatement policies, whatever. And so, businesses don't know what to do. Google doesn't want to handle these. They get pushed off. They get told, oh, this is just working as intended. And either people are left without a solution, or in the case of suspensions, businesses are really impacted. Case of reviews, businesses are impacted. Or they can't go on with their marketing because they can't upload the images, or the listing's not visible, or they can't figure out where to do it. I mean, it's like, this is one of the richest companies in the world. And I know they've made their living doing this sort of externalizing costs, but I think it's time to rephrase it from build early and iterate often to build early crap and externalize the cost. I mean, it's time to rephrase this saying and be done with this crap.
Well, I mean, Mike, don't you think that it's interesting to me first that reviews form 25% of the complaints between missing and fake and negative reviews. That's still the sort of biggest single issue, it looks like. There.
It is now. It wasn't during the summer when suspensions were, but it has been a big issue since last March when they put the new AI filtering in.
Don't you think that Google could address a lot of this with better expectations management and clearer communication around what's really going on?
Some of it, but there's not only not clear communication, there's disingenuous communication. They tell new businesses, go out and ask for a review. Here's a link. And then many of those businesses, if they're in a target category, have their reviews filtered and they can't figure out why. So if you're in home services or real estate or home construction, the chance of you getting a review, if you're asking, is very slim, virtually none. And so clearly it's part of their spam policy, but they don't communicate about it. And then they have us accepting these false positives, submitting them. So clearly we're working to retrain or to additionally train the AI. I mean, maybe the AI shouldn't have been released when it was almost a year ago. It was too immature. It nuked too many reviews, but
well, it may be a function. It may be a function of teams in Google not talking to each other or not coordinating in some cases.
It very well could be. It is certainly disturbing to the businesses it happens to. And in many situations, it's very costly to them because they had an expectation. What's interesting is the shift, in the 2014, 2015, 2016, everybody did a Facebook page first. Now you talk to these new businesses and they're all doing Google business profiles first and expecting to be able to get reviews because they know that's what they look at themselves and they think everybody does. And it's probably true. And yet they go through this process and they're inevitably disappointed because it doesn't work the way
it points to a very poor expectation setting and messaging experience from Google that, hey, this is your profile. And it in the same way that your Facebook page is your Facebook page. And it just doesn't work the same way. Your profile is a repository for information that Google collects about you across the internet. And you have some marginal influence into how that appears, but Google is going to trust users just as much as they trust you. They're going to trust third-party sources just as much as they trust you. And I think I totally understand why a business owner, would have the expectation that it's their profile, but it's just not the case. And I think that a lot of these things, Mike, I would ask you, if Google is going to chronically underinvest in this product to the way that they have in the last year plus since they decided to sort of shut down the app and to, migrate all of these features from the dashboard, if they're going to chronically underinvest in it, can't we just make their job even easier and just say, hey, eliminate this product entirely and provide some sort of like simple form in Google Search Console for structured data from the business?
It all depends. If reviews continue to be important and Google wants them, then reviews will continue to be a problem. Doesn't matter how the data gets into Google. Certainly from an interface
Don't you think that a situation like a paradigm like that, where you're simply submitting structured data, doesn't create the expectation that a review will be published or that Google will accept this data?
Well, I think the problem with it from Google's point of view, in 2015, I wrote an article about Google was debranding local. And my sense was they were going to make Google Maps the center of the universe for local and perceived businesses as just another subset of consumers in that regard. And that they have done that, right? They finally have pushed everybody into Google Maps because they still show ads when you find your business and you get ready to edit, you're still being delivered ads in that context and you're using their main search product. So I think there are probably bigger issues at play. One of which is that many businesses went into the dashboard, wherever it was, left, did it and then forgot about it, never changed it. Then Google's probably right in that surfacing it in search gives businesses more likely opportunity to change this data. But clearly they've debranded local almost totally now. And it's just part of the search experience or part of the maps experience. So I don't think they're going to, maybe they could do it in Search Console. I don't think they will.
So Search Console is a red herring. I'm just saying, why don't you just completely kill the GMB product at this or GBP product at this point?
Just have an online
NMX
form.
Is such a bad experience. It's clearly creating false expectations. Google clearly doesn't prioritize it internally. Just get rid of it.
It isn't just NMX, though. Certainly, one could argue get rid of it, but missing reviews, not showing businesses because they're suspended, phone numbers not showing and not
but again,
being published.
if you're doing away with the entire notion of claiming a profile, none of this actually is, none of this would have the same level of frustration for the business owner.
Yeah. I think the other side of it is they view these as potential funnel. This is a funnel, and they view this as a way to generate ad revenue.
Of course they do. So, I mean, we could have another 30-minute, 60-minute long conversation. We're almost at the end here about why Google is in the position that it's in, which is a historical thing, the way that this product developed and the relationship that Google had with initially SMB resellers, and then how it sort of tried to bring all the data, sort of establish a direct connection with small businesses. And then they very much did view GMB or GBP now as a funnel product that would then result in advertising, but it has not, right? So I think that's part of the reason why they're de-investing in it, because it has not proven to be, at least internally, it's disappointing. It's not proven to be an on-ramp to ads in the way that they were originally expecting it to be. And
yet it has become an on-ramp to display ads. I mean, every user in the world uses Google Maps or Google Search, one or the other or both, and they use them locally because they're happening on a phone.
Very important to consumers. There is an exception to what I just said, which is LSAs probably. That's
right.
probably.
So I would say if you're a business, you are better served by Google if Google just makes everything for a service area business part of the LSA experience. And if you're an e-commerce or product merchant, everything should just live in Merchant Center, because this product has just gone to absolute dog crap at this point. And
right.
it's in my mind, it's creating many more headaches than would be created if it just went away. So.
But it's like,
although interesting, in LSA, you see the same issues we saw in the last 10 years of local, which is spam.
But at least there, Mike, the business is paying Google, and that there is theoretically some liability if Google doesn't perform on behalf of a customer.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a mess. I agree. And it should be an embarrassment to Google. It's not. They perceive this as how they do business. It's very chaotic to the small businesses in the world.
They don't really care about the individual small businesses. The small businesses are data sources. They're serving the consumer by delivering this information. It's a critical product the paradox here is that it's a critical product for Google strategically for the consumer, and to some degree for, as you say, there's some ads tied to it, but they just don't give a bleep about the business owner.
So Greg, that's where I differ. I don't think it is a critical product for them strategically. The data that lives inside of a typical Google business profile is critical for them strategically.
That's what I mean.
GBP is not strategic for them.
No, that's what I mean. Delivering the local information that the user is seeking from Google is critical for them.
Yes.
Anyway, it's fascinating because they've gone, maybe this is an article at some point, they've done this whole journey that's put them in the position that they're in. And now it's like Vietnam, they're in too deep in a certain way.
It's like the Dutch boy in the dam.
Yeah. So, all right. So that brings us to the end of another, sounds like somebody's taking a shower in the background in your place, Mike. That brings us to the end of another exciting episode of the Near Memo. We're slowly approaching the milestone 100 podcasts. And I think for next time, we're going to try and wrangle some people to talk about AI and local and some practical use cases and how they see it playing out.
I would comment that we're doing it at the same rate we've always been doing it. We're not doing it any slower than we've been doing it, getting to 100.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So everybody have a great week. We will see you next time. Tell your friends about Near Media. Ask them to subscribe. And as always, give us feedback. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.